For 48 years, this hillside never got wet. Then, for about 38 hours, it was the only thing standing between a reservoir and a city. Somewhere in the tallest dam in the United States, a number was climbing that the people watching it had been told, in writing, not to worry about. By the end of this file, you'll know exactly which memo said this couldn't happen, and which agency signed it 11 years before it did. Oroville Dam is the tallest dam in America, taller than the Hoover. Built from 300 million pounds of packed earth and rock. One number matters more than the dam's height. What's held behind it? Enough water to flood every street in Los Angeles, knee-deep. This chute is what actually protects the dam, not the wall you picture. This is where the water is meant to go when the lake gets too full. On February 7th, 2017, an operator watching the chute noticed something odd in the water. Not a flood, a shape that shouldn't have been there. You probably remember this as the dam that almost broke. It didn't. The dam never moved. Something underneath a parking lot thick slab did. By the next morning, that crack was a hole 200 feet long, deep enough to swallow a 10-story building. Every decision from here has to be made while the reservoir keeps rising, and the only spillway built to release it is now the problem. A year later, 6 independent engineers finished a 584-page report. This is the document this entire file is built on. Source: the incident was the result of a long-term systemic failure to recognize design weaknesses. Systemic doesn't mean sudden. It means the file goes back further than the storm. It goes back to the year this dam was finished. In 1968, engineers poured this chute directly onto the hillside rock beneath it. That rock turned out to matter more than anyone planned for. Some of that bedrock was solid. Some of it, the report found, was closer to compacted ash. Strong enough to build on, not strong enough to survive fast-moving water. That same rock is exactly what the floodwater reached the moment the concrete above it gave way. This exact vulnerability was in the file before the crater ever opened. Not buried, filed. We'll get to the memo that proves it. Here's what this chute actually is. Concrete slabs, laid in sections, joined at seams, with drains underneath meant to relieve pressure. When water gets under a slab like this, instead of over it, it doesn't just sit there, it pushes up. Engineers call this uplift. The water underneath was pushing harder than the concrete above weighed. Physics doesn't ask permission. Once one section lifted and broke away, the fast water below hit raw rock directly, the one thing the concrete had been there to protect. At roughly 50,000 cubic feet per second, the erosion wasn't gradual. It was measured in feet of rock removed per hour. Shutting the spillway off entirely would stop the erosion and let the lake keep climbing toward the top of the dam itself. There was no version of this where nothing eroded. Only a choice about which erosion was survivable. There was a backup, an emergency spillway. For 48 years, it had never once carried water. It wasn't concrete. It was a hill. February 11th, 2017. Water crosses this weir for the first time since the dam was finished. Nobody standing here has ever seen this happen. The idea wasn't reckless on paper. This spillway was built for floods rarer than anything in living memory. Nobody expected it to be tested. Water without a channel doesn't flow evenly. It finds the softest path and digs. Within hours, that path became a canyon. That channel was heading straight for the foundation under the weir itself. If it undermined that, the weir wouldn't erode, it would fail. On February 12th, officials ordered an evacuation, not of a neighborhood, of nearly 190,000 people downstream. The investigation later debated exactly how many hours of erosion the foundation could have survived. Nobody wanted to test the answer. Crews began dropping rock, boulders, even concrete blocks straight into the channel, trying to armor the one path the water had found. Engineers reopened the cratered main spillway anyway, damage and all, just to pull water away from the failing hillside faster than it could climb. The level dropped below the emergency spillway's crest. The immediate danger passed. The investigation into why it happened was just starting. The forensic team's own conclusion: this cannot reasonably be blamed on any one person, agency, or decision. That's the part that should worry you. The incident cannot reasonably be blamed on any one individual, group, or organization. Weak rock, a slab poured onto it anyway, drains that couldn't relieve enough pressure. Every piece was survivable alone. Together, they weren't. Engineers had a name for this failure mode decades before 2017. It wasn't new. It was familiar and still underestimated. The original design used a thinner slab in sections engineers considered lower risk. The section that failed first was one of them.
Cracks like the one that started this were documented, patched, and re-inspected for years. Every year it held was treated as proof it always would.
That's the quiet reframe underneath this whole file. An inspection that finds nothing wrong isn't the same as a structure with nothing wrong. Cracked slab, uplift, exposed rock, erosion, an untested emergency route forced into use. That's the mechanism, beginning to end. You now know how it failed. What's left is why it took 50 years and one specific rejected warning to get there. To understand the decision trail, we have to go back 12 years before the crater, back to a fight almost nobody outside California remembers. A filing from 2005 and a forensic report from 2018, 13 years apart, are about to describe the exact same hillside. If you'd stood on this hillside in 2005, you'd have seen nothing. No crisis, just a slope some engineers were already worried about. On October 17, 2005, 3 environmental and civic groups filed a motion asking federal regulators to require this hillside be lined in concrete. Their argument was specific. Water running unchecked down bare ground would erode it fast enough to threaten the dam and everything downstream. In 2006, a federal engineer reviewed the request. His written conclusion? The spillway would perform as designed. 2006. The spillway would perform as designed. 2017. It flowed for the first time in its history and nearly took the dam with it in under 40 hours. Source: the emergency spillway would perform as designed. Sediment resulting from erosion would be insignificant. Sit with that for a second. Then we'll keep reading the file. As recently as 2014, a flood management plan commissioned by the dam's own operator spelled out this exact vulnerability again. None of this was hidden. Every document existed in the public record. The failure wasn't concealment. It was nobody's job to connect them. The dam's operator later said it took the independent report seriously and folded its findings straight into the rebuild.
That's also true. And it's also 13 years late.
You've probably crossed a dam or lived downstream of one without ever asking who reviewed its emergency spillway last. This is the same shape as almost every failure in this file series. Not a secret, a known risk, filed and never prioritized until it moved. 48 years without a single test. One warning filed and answered in writing. Then 38 hours from first flow to evacuation order. The uplifted slab and the ignored motion aren't two stories. They're one mechanism, a system that only reacts once something physically gives way. To be fair to the record, once it failed, the fix that followed was fast, thorough, and so far has held. The rebuild cost over $1 billion. The concrete lining those 2005 groups asked for was estimated at the time at a fraction of that. All three documents sit in the same file now. They always could have. Every piece of infrastructure you rely on has a version of this decision tree sitting in a filing cabinet somewhere. Crack, uplift, crater, overflow, erosion racing the clock toward a foundation nobody had ever tested. That's the file, from first hairline to evacuation order. The grass has grown back on that hillside now. Underneath it, the file stays open. Would perform as designed. It did, just not the design anyone meant. The investigation is closed, filed, final, stamped. The risk it describes was never unique to this one hillside. The same three ingredients, an old design, an unlined backup, and a warning someone filed and moved past, exist at other dams right now. The chute is rebuilt. The lake still rises every winter. The next question is what actually changed and what didn't. The dam safety field did change its own rules after this, not just at Oroville. Regulators pushed dam owners toward what's called risk-informed inspection, comparing a structure to its original design, not just to whether it's currently standing. The United States has roughly 15,000 dams rated high hazard, not because they're all failing, because failure there would reach people. You don't need to know which dam is nearest to you. You just need to know that "it's never happened" isn't the same sentence as "it can't." The forensic team's final recommendation wasn't about this dam specifically. It was about how every dam owner should think. Here's what you keep from this file. Uplift isn't rare. It's just invisible until the thing it's under stops being heavier than it is. Next time you cross a bridge over a spillway or walk near a reservoir, that word, uplift, will mean something it didn't an hour ago. The forensic team never claimed to know which dam is next. That question the report leaves open on purpose. That restraint is the most honest thing in the whole document. This channel exists to read files like this one before the crater opens, not after. Somewhere right now, a warning almost exactly like this one is sitting in a filing cabinet, waiting to be right. That's the file. A closed investigation, not a closed risk. This one is filed. The next one hasn't been read yet.